All the tenses in 15 minutes. Are you crazy? Well, we're never going to survive unless we are a little ambitious. The problem with the tenses is that normally you learn one tense in one chapter, the next tense in the next chapter, and so on. So maybe by the time you arrive at chapter 6, you might have forgotten what was in chapter 1. And in reality, language doesn't work that way, and native speakers certainly don't speak that way. We mix the tenses. So whether you are writing a report, giving a presentation, writing an email, having a discussion, or sending an SMS, knowing how to use the tenses correctly will make you sound more professional and feel more confident. So let's begin with an overview. Here are all the tenses in the English language. We've numbered them to make them easy to compare, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Compare the tenses. We want you to look at the little character in the middle. All around this person is the present tense. To the left is the past tenses, and to the right we have the future. Now let's begin. We're going to start by comparing number 1, the present simple, and number 2, the present continuous. What's the difference between number 1 and number 2? For those of you who said I speak is the present simple because it's my mother tongue and therefore it's all the time, you're correct. I am learning is at the moment because it's for a limited amount of time. Therefore, the difference between number 1 and number 2 is that number 1 is all the time and number 2 is at the moment. Now we're going to move on to number 3, the past simple, and number 4, the past continuous. Take a look at the following sentences and tell me the difference. You got the answer? Let's check. Both actions take place in the past, so therefore both actions are finished. However, when you break something, it's a short action. But if you play a game, it's a much longer action. Therefore, the difference between number 3 and number 4, 3 is short, 4 is long. Unfortunately, it's up to you to decide logically in the sentence which is the short action and which is the long action. Hopefully, you can manage that. Now we're going to move on to number 3, the past simple, and compare it to number 5, the present perfect. This is sometimes a little bit problematic depending on your mother tongue. Look at the following sentences and see if you can find the difference. Okay, so for those of you who looked at the first sentence and decided that the person is dead, you're correct. In the first sentence we used the past simple because this person lived in Toronto all his life and probably died in Toronto. The action is finished. If you look at the second sentence, we use the present perfect. And the present perfect in English is used to say that something is in progress from the past until now. So it could mean this person is still living in Toronto, but we do know he is certainly alive and not dead. Do we know he's going to stay in Toronto the rest of his life? No. The present perfect only gives us the information from the past until now, and it doesn't really tell us anything about the future. In order to understand the difference between number 5 and 6, we can use the same example. If we say he has been living in Toronto all his life, which is the present perfect continuous, then we get the impression he likes it and he's going to stay in Toronto. That's why we use the present perfect continuous, because it probably continues. Now let's take a look at some more past tenses. Are you with me so far? Good. We're now going to compare number 3, the past simple, with number 7, the past perfect. Take a look at the following sentence and try to explain why I used number 3 and number 7. If you guessed that the train left before we arrived, you're 100% correct. We use the past perfect, number 7, to describe an action which is finished before another past action, the past simple in this case. Another way to remember it is that we only use the past perfect if we compare it to the past simple. Number 7 must be used with number 3. That way we can tell which is the first action, number 7, and which happened later, the second action, number 3. Take a look at the following 2 sentences and tell me what happened first. Logically, first you read the book, then you decided to watch the movie. Now that brings us to number 8. Take a look at the following 2 sentences again and see if you can tell me the difference. To best explain this, we have to look again at our diagram and especially focus on the tenses which occur underneath the line. We can see that number 4 is longer than number 3, although both happen in the past and both are finished. Number 7 and number 8 happen before 3 and 4, but again 8 is longer than 7. So, if we say that when I woke up this morning it had rained, it's safe to assume that it's not raining anymore, but the ground is a little bit wet. If I say, when I woke up this morning I noticed it had been raining, it's also safe to assume it's not raining now, but the ground is very wet. Again, you have to use your logic to decide whether the verb is better short or long. Take a look at these sentences and see if you can tell me, is the verb better short or long? You are again correct if you chose the second sentence, because logically, when someone smokes, it takes a longer time. So far, we have learned 8 out of a possible 13 tenses, or 8/13 as a fraction, or 61.54 as a percentage, but this isn't about mathematics, this is about grammar. So let's get back to grammar and back to the future. The future, unfortunately, is a minefield of possibilities. It basically depends on how confident or how soon you expect something to happen. Let's look again at our diagram and focus on number 9, will, and 10, going to. Number 9 is positioned closer to the central character because number 9 is something spontaneous. Therefore, we use will for things which are more spontaneous. 10, or going to, is a little bit further in the future because we use 10, or going to, as a plan. So take a look at the following 4 sentences and decide which verb, will or going to, is more logical. The logical answer, of course, is we're going to get married because it's a plan. I'll get these drinks because it's spontaneous. I'll drive you, it's also spontaneous. And she is going to buy a car because that is also a plan. We're now going to risk pushing you over the edge by introducing yet another tense, which might not be so obvious. But first, if we imagine will and going to as percentages, they may look a little something like this. I say 50% when I use will because it's spontaneous. So this means it's an idea that I have. I don't have any tickets, I just want to go. I use 80% for going to because, as we already mentioned, going to is a plan. This probably means I did my research, I know which hotel I want to stay in, and I know when I want to fly. But what if we use this tense? You may already recognize this as the present continuous, or number 2 on your diagram. And we use the present continuous with a future reference point to talk about a fixed arrangement in the future, or something which is 100%. Now let's move on to number 11. We're almost there. On your diagram, you can see that number 11 is the future continuous. And once again, it's a longer period of time underneath the line, very similar to number 4 or number 6 or number 8. However, we use number 11, the future continuous, to talk about something in the future that we know will be happening a longer period of time. So take a look at the following sentence. Once again, when you go to a beach, you don't go for 5 minutes, lie down, pack up your stuff and go home. You go for a longer period of time. So logically, will be lying makes more sense. We're almost there. We're within touching distance of the finishing line, but bear with me, because next is number 12 and 13. Number 12 is the future perfect, and the future perfect is a point of time in the future which has already finished. Sounds crazy, right? But I told you at the beginning of this video that if you're gonna survive, you're gonna have to be a little bit ambitious. So take a look at the following sentence. If you were on your way to a party, you might look at your watch and calculate that by the time you arrive, the party will have finished, because you know that you are running late. With the future perfect, it's very common to use the word by with the present simple and then the future perfect. So then what's the difference between number 12 and 13, I hear you ask? Well, number 13 is the future perfect continuous. And if we compare it to number 12, we can say this. Number 12 is a point of time in the future. When we reach it, we realize something has already finished. Number 13 is another point of time in the future. We reach it, we acknowledge something, but the action keeps going. So that's it. That's all the tenses as quickly as possible. Feel free to go back and start this video again. Press pause when you want to. Thank you for watching, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and stay in touch so that you are informed of any new videos that we're posting, and also follow us on Instagram for some daily grammar teasers.